What's going on, guys? It's your boy Nick coming at you on the channel with my updated Springans Branded deck profile for the post-May 2022 ban list. If you guys thought that this deck needed Verte Anaconda to be viable and be competitive, you couldn't be more wrong. And I'm here to show you guys what I've been working on post-ban list. I do want to apologize that it's been a minute since I've uploaded some stuff. Just been busy with work and life in general and waiting for cards to come in the mail, of course. You know, it's just a typical thing. Every time you want to buy something, stuff in the mail is always getting delayed, but it is what it is. I've been doing some testing with this deck since the ban list dropped. I kind of figured Verte would be getting hit on the list, which I even mentioned in the previous profile, pre-ban list. But it's hit, and now we're forced to move on without it. Good riddance, in my opinion. The card is absolutely cracked. I'm not going to miss it that much. This deck didn't need it. For those of you that thought that it did, like I said, I'm here to explain to you that you're incorrect. This deck does not need Verte. In fact, I think the deck is even better without it. For those of you that are new to the channel, though, my name is Nick. We do live duel videos, deck profiles, deck discussions, test hands, combo tutorials. If those are things that you're interested in, then I urge you to please like the video, subscribe. We just made it to 350 subscribers. I remember when my channel had barely 100, and now we're on our way to 400 subs. I want to thank you guys so much for all the love and support that you've given me, and I can't express how grateful I am, and just it feels so good to be able to bring you guys this content and actually have people like respond to it and enjoy it. It just makes me feel good. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and jump right into this updated profile. You know how we do it here on the channel. We're always going to be starting with the monster lineup first, and then we'll go into our spells, followed by our traps. So with that being said, let's jump right in, guys. We're on triple copies of Springans Rockey. This obviously didn't change from the previous version. Rockey, in my opinion, is one of the stronger normal summons in the deck, given that upon normal or special summon, he can target a Great Sand City Gold Golganda, which is the Springans field spell, or a Springans monster in the graveyard except himself, and add it to the hand. Really cool effect, in my opinion. Also, he has a secondary effect where he can attach himself to a Springans Xyz as material from the hand, the field, or the graveyard. All of the machine Springans share that secondary ability across the board, which I think is pretty cool and definitely gives them that unique playstyle, given that they do tend to cheat out their Xyz monsters without the proper material under it. So being able to attach these guys as material under each Springans Xyz definitely makes them a lot more viable. So triple copies of Rockey, of course. Moving on, though, we are on triple copies of Brothers. This card, in my opinion, is probably one of the best main deck Springans monsters due to the fact that he is literally an in-archetype monster reborn. If this card is sent from the hand or the deck to grave, you can target a Springans monster in your grave except himself and special summon it in defense position. And then again, just like Rockey, he does have the secondary effect where he can attach himself to an Xyz monster, Springans Xyz monster, as a material from the hand, the deck, or the graveyard. So triple Brothers is obviously really, really good. Moving on, though, we are on 2 copies of Springans Kitt. She is brand new out of the structure deck, the Alba Strike. Springans Kitt is actually the only non-fire, non-machine monster, Springans monster in the main deck. However, she is Springans in name, which makes her searchable through a lot of the other cards within the theme. Basically, though, she is actually like a level 4 extender. If we control a fusion monster that mentions Albaz as material, or have a fusion monster that lists Albaz as material in our graveyard, she can special summon herself from our hand. Then, when she's normal or special summoned, she lets us add a branded spell or trap from the deck, graveyard, or the banish zone to our hand, which is absolutely insane given that she can add a branded spell trap from literally anywhere. However, the only drawback is that if we do that, we have to take a card from our hand and place it on the bottom of our deck. So it's not really a +1, it's more of a break even in terms of like card economy. However, we don't really need to play 3 of it given how searchable she is within the theme, and we can keep recurring her with stuff like Brothers and Rockey, obviously, with their effects. So I think playing 2 copies of Kitt is perfect, especially when you consider that running 3 copies tends to get a little bit bricky, especially late game, once you start running out of stuff to search. We're not really playing that many Springans spell or branded spell traps in the deck, so there's only like a few things you can search. And once you search them out early game, there's usually not really a need to search them out again later in the game. if that makes any kind of sense. So I think playing triple copies of Kitt just doesn't feel correct. 2 is more than enough, especially given that we can keep recurring her and adding her to hand off of our other Springans monsters. So just 2 copies of Kitt, really great card, and definitely bridges the gap between the Springans and the Albaz lore, which I think is great. 1 copy of Pedor, in my opinion, still like the least impactful Springans main deck monster, but you still play it as a one-of just because it does come up every so often. What he does is he can tribute himself to then target a Springans monster in your grave, accept himself, and special summon it. Pretty cool for the most part. Just the one-of is all you need, especially since it serves as an additional name. And he does share the same secondary effect that Brothers and Rockey have, being able to attach himself as a material to any Springans Xyz from the hand, the deck, or I'm sorry, the hand, the field, or the graveyard, not the deck. Forgive me for that. Moving on, though, we are on 2 copies of Springans Capt and Sargas and 2 copies of Springans Branga, the level 8 Springans monsters. Both of these cards serve really as forms of utility within the deck. Branga being able to banish himself from the graveyard and another Springans monster with a different name to then add a Springans card from the deck to the hand. So he serves as like a rota for the deck. Does require some setup, but to be honest with you, it's really not that hard to pull off. He also does have 2,500 defense, which means if you do manage to summon this to field, he is pretty formidable in terms of a defender. Then we have Captain Sargas. What he does is during the opponent's turn, as a quick effect, we can detach a material from any Xyz monster we control and keep them on any Xyz. Doesn't have to be a Springans Xyz. We can attach a material from a Xyz we control to target a card on the field and destroy it. And that's a quick effect during the opponent's turn. So that gives us some much needed like spot removal and like disruption for the opponent's turn, which I think is really cool, especially given that Sargas has 2,800 defense, which just makes him really beefy and difficult to hit over in most cases. Not to mention that if Sargas is attached to a Springans Xyz as material, he grants the Springans Xyz an additional 500 attack, which I think is really cool. Also, furthermore, Sargas and Branga do have the similar effects that Pedor, Brothers, and Rockey have, being able to attach themselves as a material to a Springans Xyz from the hand, the field, or the graveyard. So, really, really great level 8 monsters in my opinion, but 2 ofs is perfect. I don't think you max out on either or. 2 ofs of each is the perfect ratio. But that wraps up the Springans monsters in the main deck. Now we're moving on to the Albaz stuff, which we played 2 copies of Fallen of Albaz himself. This card, upon normal or special summon, we can discard a card to then fusion summon a fusion monster from our extra deck using materials from either field, including this card. Basically, it's super polymerization on legs. What more can I say? This card is absolutely insane. Being able to fuse off your opponent's stuff to make your own boss monsters is absolutely fun. I can't express how awesome this card is. Being able to, like, going second, you can literally break boards with this thing. It's so cracked. So 2 copies of Albaz. We are main decking the 1 copy of Incredible Ecclesia, the Virtuous. We're main decking this because I did build this deck with the sense that I wanted it to be as competitive as possible. Now, I understand that Incredible Ecclesia isn't very cheap, which means that it's out of budget for most players, especially when you consider the fact that Springans as a archetype is very budget for the most part, given that all the cards are pretty much common, and the rest of the stuff came out in a structure deck, which is like $10 anyway. So the deck is very budget. Ecclesia is not budget, however. Do you need to play this card in this deck? No. She effectively just serves as a 3rd copy of Albaz. However, if you don't want to run Ecclesia, you don't have to. And if you don't, then just run the 3rd Albaz in its place. The only reason why we play this card, again, is because I wanted this deck to be as competitive as possible. Ecclesia does serve as a pseudo level 4 extender, being able to special herself from hand if the opponent controls more monsters than we do, so it helps us with going second. And then she can also, as a quick effect, tag into Albaz during either player's main phase, which, again, just adds more utility to the deck overall and consistency as well. So, 1 copy of Ecclesia. Again, you don't have to run it. I'm choosing to because I have access to it, but if it's out of your budget, then don't feel bad. Just play the 3rd Albaz and you'll be just fine. Also, too, her secondary effect comes up a lot, where during the end phase, if a fusion monster was sent to the graveyard that turn, she can add herself from the graveyard back to my hand. So it's just a recurable resource that I can continue using throughout the course of the duel, which I think is really cool. Then we play the 1 Albion. Again, he's like our pseudo 4th copy of Albaz because he can treat himself as Fallen of Albaz while he's on the field or in the graveyard. This card is a lot of text, but I'm just going to summarize it pretty quickly. Basically, if it's in your hand, if you draw this, you can send a Branded spell trap or Albaz himself from deck to grave, take this card, place it on the bottom of your deck, and then draw a card. So it's almost like a Foolish Burial and a Upstart Goblin all in one. He can also use that same effect from the graveyard, meaning if he's in the grave, he can do the same thing, dump a Albaz or Branded spell trap, and then place himself on the bottom of the deck. However, if you do it from grave, you don't get the draw. So keep that in mind. But just one copy of Albion, again, is all we need. It also serves as really good fusion fodder with Branded Fusion, being able to dump it from the deck to the graveyard as well. Then, a brand new post-Banlist. We're on one copy of Tri-Brigade Mercourier. This card, I really overlooked pre-Banlist. Post-Banlist, it's actually worked out pretty well in testing. What this is like a hand trap, basically. If we control a fusion monster that mentions Albaz as material, and your opponent activates a monster effect, we can send this card from the hand or field to grave to negate that effect. Really interesting type of hand trap in my opinion, given that it can negate a monster effect from anywhere, whether it's on the field, in the hand, graveyard, banished, doesn't matter. And it's not very difficult to set up either, given that we can search this card with Branded in High Spirits, which is a spell we main deck, and we can search it off Brigand, the Glory Dragon, which is a fusion monster we play in the extra deck as well. So I just think it's really cool, having a Mirror Jade on board, for example, and then using its quick effect to banish a monster while dumping Brigand as cost, and then at the end phase, Brigand triggers to then search the Mercourier to hand, which gives us another negate on the following turn, which I think is really cool. So one copy of that. Then we're playing one copy of Zexal Weapon Pegasus Twin Saber. You're probably wondering why the hell we're running this. Kind of a bit of a spoiler. We are playing a small Utopia double package in the extra deck post-ban list, something that I've been toying with ever since Verte got banned. This card is actually pretty cool. It's a level 5 light beast type monster, and basically if we can target a Utopia monster we control, equip this card from the hand, equip this card we control to that target, and it grants it 1,000 additional attack. And once per turn, while it's equipped to a monster, we can negate a monster effect activated on the opponent's field. So basically, it's almost like a union monster of sorts. It can equip itself to a Utopia Xyz we control, and then while it's equipped, it basically grants that Utopia Xyz an additional 1,000 attack, and grants it this effect to once per turn we can negate a monster effect activated in the opponent's field. Now, what's cool about this effect is the fact that this does not start a chain link. It's a very interesting form of negation, meaning that because it negates the effect at resolution, not at activation. I believe MST TV or Tombox, as he's called, made a ruling video about this card specifically, because it's very weird how it operates. It doesn't start a chain. Whenever the opponent uses a monster effect on field, at resolution, we have the choice to use this effect and just negate it, which is pretty funny because it doesn't really give the chance for the opponent to respond, which I think is really cool. So one copy of that. Also, you might look at this and say that it's a kind of a garnet, but in reality it isn't, and I'll explain why shortly when we get to the spell cards. But moving on, we play 2 copies of Ash Blossom in the main deck as our hand trap of choice. Again, in my opinion, Ash is just the most generic hand trap you can run. It stops so many different things in the format. You could run 3 Ash, but for some reason I was testing with 3 and I just kept bricking on drawing multiples. So I cut it down to 2, and ever since then I've been pretty happy with that ratio. But if you want to run 3, by all means feel free to. So 2 Ash. But that's it for the monsters, guys. We're going to be jumping into the spell cards now. Triple copies of Great Sandsea Gold Golganda. This is the Springans field spell, and this is the field spell that basically makes the deck work, for lack of a better word. What it does is it grants all Springans Xyz monsters 1,000 attack. And a secondary effect is if we control no Springans Xyz monsters, we can discard a Springans card to then special summon a Springans Xyz from the extra deck. So it's literally like a free Xyz monster at the cost of a discard. And I say free even though we discard because most of the Springans cards you're discarding want to be in the graveyard anyway. So it's almost like you're setting yourself up for future plays. But this just allows us to cheat out our Xyz boss monsters for free practically, and then now it might all make sense as to why a lot of the Springans monsters can attach themselves as material, because most of the time you're summoning a Springans Xyz, you're summoning it with the field spell, and it doesn't have material when it's summoned that way. It does have another effect where if a Xyz monster we control leaves the field by a card effect, which could even be our own card effect, We can target a monster the opponent controls, and it cannot attack this turn, even if the field spell leaves the field. So that just prevents us from getting like OTK'd. So triple copies of Golganda, which is really cool. Then we're on triple copies of Springans Watch, which serves as our 4th, 5th, and 6th copies of the field spell, given that upon activation, if we do not control the Great Sand Sea, we can add the Great Sand Sea from deck to hand. However, if we do control the Great Sand Sea, this card's effect becomes we can add a Springans monster from the deck to our hand, and then if we do, we can send a Springans monster from deck to grave. So this card is literally Terraforming, Rhoda, and Foolish Burial all in one card. One of the most insane archetypal spell cards I think I've read in recent memory. So triple copies of that. Then we're on triple copies of Springans Booty. This basically serves as our 7th, 8th, and 9th copy of the field spell, given that we can send this card from the field to the graveyard to activate a Great Sand Sea from the deck or the graveyard. That interaction cannot be stopped by Ash Blossom since we are not adding the card to hand, we are simply activating it from deck or grave. So again, just further consistency, being able to, you want to see your field spell as often as you can, and all these cards help you do that. This card does have another effect where if a Xyz monster leaves the field by a card effect, again, that could even be our own card effect, we can target an effect monster the opponent controls, and for the rest of this turn, neither player can activate that effect monster's effects. So this kind of serves as like a pseudo effect veiler of sorts. So triple copies of that. 1 Terraforming, giving us exactly 10 different ways to see the field spell, which in a 44 card deck, the odds should be pretty much in your favor to at least see the field spell every hand almost. So 1 Terraforming, obviously, again, just adding more consistency. Then we're on triple copies of Branded and High Spirits. I cannot speak highly enough of this card. It lets us reveal a monster in our hand, and then we send a level 8 fusion monster from our extra deck to the graveyard with the same type as the revealed monster that has 2500 attack or defense. This lets us Foolish Burial any Albaz fusion pretty much. We reveal a Springans in our hand, and then we dump Sprend, which is the Albaz fusion for the Springans archetype. And this just starts a lot of our plays, given that most of the Albaz fusions trigger their effects during the end phase of the turn they were sent to the graveyard. However, that's just the first part of the effect. If we want to, we can choose to activate the secondary effect where we can discard the monster we revealed initially to then add a Fallen of Albaz or any monster that lists that card in its text from the deck to our hand. So this allows us to search Albaz, Incredible Ecclesia, Albion, Springans Kitt, or the Tri-Brigade Mercourier. Now you're probably getting back real quick to the Zexal weapon we're running. Pegasus Twin Saber. Pegasus Twin Saber happens to be a beast type monster, which means even if we draw the Twin Saber, it's not exactly a Garnet if we also have Branded and High Spirits, because we can reveal this in our hand off of Branded and High Spirits effect to then dump Brigand the Glory Dragon to grave, since that card is also a beast, which kind of makes the Twin Saber really cool and not so bad to draw. Also, too, keep in mind that Springans Kitt, when we use her effect to search a branded spell trap, we have to take a card from our hand and place it on the bottom. So even if we do draw the Twin Saber, it's not really that bad, given that Kitt can just put it back in deck, or if we draw this in tandem with Branded and High Spirits, it can also facilitate a combo line for us, which is pretty cool and definitely unique. So triple copies of Branded and High Spirits, I can't understate how amazing this card is. Also, during the end phase, if a fusion monster is sent to the graveyard during this turn, you can add this card from the graveyard back to the hand. So, this card is just absolutely nuts. Like I said, play 3 of it in any version of Branded you're running. It's so good. 1 Branded fusion, obviously. We just need the one of. Springans Kitt can search it from literally anywhere. And again, Springans is an Xyz archetype. It's not a fusion archetype. So, we just need the 1 Branded fusion. Obviously, we all know what the card does. It's absolutely cracked. It's what got Verte banned, pretty much. So, yeah, moving on. 1 Branded in white. This just allows us to fusion summon, again, in different ways if we don't have access to Branded Fusion, for example. But this gives us the option to banish the material from grave to fuse as well, as long as we're using Albaz as one of the materials. So, 1 copy of that. And then we're on 2 copies of Forbidden Droplet in the main deck. Again, let me just reiterate, I built this deck to be as competitive as possible. So as a result of that, I am running 2 copies of Droplet. It took me quite a bit of time to scrounge up my pennies to afford this. I was able to buy 2 copies, so I have access to it now. I'm definitely going to be running it. I will say that it is not required in this deck by any means to run Droplet. If you do not have access to it, I am well aware that this card is extremely expensive. You do not need to run this card. If you choose not to run it because you don't have access to it, play any other hand trap of your choice, or just play, like I said, the third copy of Fallen of Albaz or the third copy of Kitt potentially. But yeah, I'm on 2 copies of Droplet. It's been a long time since I invested in a card that was this expensive, but I felt that it was necessary given the way things were going. So 2 Droplet, again, just helps us with going second and breaking boards. We're on 1 copy of Pot of Avarice, something I've been testing post Banlist. Really great card, being able to target 5 monsters in the grave and then shuffle them into the deck to draw 2 cards. This helps us recycle like a lot of our fusions that wind up being dumped to grave off of various effects. This helps us recycle like Fallen of Albaz or any other Springans card monster that we want, while also giving us a draw 2 in the process. So 1 copy of that. It's been working out pretty well in testing. 1 Called by the Grave. Obviously, we want to stop any hand traps that try to disrupt us, or stop any other annoying stuff in the format like Eldritch or DPE, for example. So I think Called by is a mandatory inclusion in any deck you build. You just have to run it. It's that good. Then we play the 1 Double or Nothing. Again, this is to facilitate our Utopia double line, and I'll explain how that works when we get to the extra deck. Yes, this card is a Garnet. However, keep in mind that Springans Kitt allows us to take a card from our hand and place it back in the deck. So if we draw it, it's not really that difficult to get rid of it or put it back in deck so our combo's not dead. So 1 copy of that. And then that's it for the spells, guys. Now we're on to the traps. 2 copies of Springans Interluder. This basically just reads, turn any of your Springans Xyz into Omni Negates. Basically, when your opponent activates a card or effect, I can return the Springans Xyz I control to the extra deck to then either negate that activated effect, or I can special summon a level 8 monster from the grave. Now, while that secondary effect is cool, it seldom gets used. We're mainly using this card to negate whatever they tried to do, while sending a Springans Xyz back to our extra deck in the process. This card does have another effect where if an Xyz monster we control leaves the field by a card effect, we can make all of our opponent's monsters that they currently control lose 1,000 attack until the end of this turn, even if the Interluder leaves the field. Keep in mind that Interluder is a continuous trap. And yes, the first effect, putting bouncing a Springans Xyz you control to the extra deck to negate something, does trigger the secondary effect of this card, as well as the secondary effect of Booty, and the third effect of the Springans Field spell, which is really, really cool. So 2 Interluder. And then for the last card in the main deck is 1 Branded Retribution. This is just a counter trap that's searchable, again, off of Springans Kitt. Basically what this does is when a monster, or when your opponent activates a card or effect that would special summon a monster, we can shuffle a fusion monster we control back into the extra deck, or take 2 fusion monsters in our graveyard that mention Albaz as material, put them back in the extra deck to negate that activation, and if we do, destroy that card. So it's almost like a pseudo in archetype Solemn Judgment, and I use the word pseudo in air quotes because it's not really like Solemn Judgment, but it kind of is. And then it's got another effect where we can banish this card from the graveyard to add a branded spell trap from grave to our hand. Now that effect is actually really cool because then even if this gets banished, we can just add this back to our hand off of Kitt anyway, which is really fun. So that's pretty much it for the main deck, guys. It's 44 cards in the main. Now we're going to jump into the extra deck so you can see what changed post-Banlist. We are on 2 copies of Springans Merrymaker. Merrymaker, again, upon special summon from the extra deck, allows us to send a Springans monster from the deck to grave, so it's a Foolish Burial on summon. Then, as a quick effect, during the opponent's main or battle phase, we can banish this card until the end phase. Then, if we banish this card while it had 2 or more Xyz materials, we can also send a fusion monster from the extra deck to the graveyard that lists Fallen of Albaz as material. Really, really great card overall. Like, just being a Foolish Burial on summon to help jumpstart our plays is great. But then not only that, being able to dodge removal on the opponent's turn at quick effect speeds by banishing itself. And then also during that process, if it had 2 or more materials at the time, also being able to Foolish Burial a fusion monster that mentions Albaz is just nuts. That gives you so much follow-up for the following turn. It's not even funny. So 2 Merrymaker, really strong card. Then we are on 1 copy of Time Thief Redoer as just a generic rank 4 of choice. Again, it's another rank 4 that can banish itself as a quick effect until the end phase, which again works really well with some of the secondary effects of like the Springans Field spell, Springans Booty, and Interluder, for example. Then we're on the 1 copy of number 39 Utopia Double. This is brand new that we added and we're testing in place of the Verte since Verte is banned. This just requires any 2 level 4s to be made, and then as a quick effect we can detach a material from this card to add a double or nothing from deck to hand, and then if we do, we can special summon from the extra deck a Utopia Xyz monster by using this card as material, and if we do, its attack becomes doubled. However, it cannot attack directly, and then you transfer its materials to this card. Now, the card we play to do that with is Ultimate Leo Utopia Ray. So what we do is we summon number 39 Utopia Double, use this quick effect to detach, search double or nothing, and then we overlay the Leo Utopia Ray on top of the Utopia Double. Leo Utopia's Ray's attack becomes 5,000 because it gets doubled, and then it just can no longer attack directly, so it turns into a 5k beat stick. Now here's the interesting thing. While we control the Ultimate Leo Utopia Ray, we can detach a material to equip a Zexal weapon monster from the deck or extra deck to this card as if it were equipped by that monster's own effect. So we can basically detach a material from this guy to then attach the Zexal weapon Pegasus Twin Saber to himself from deck. And then remember, the Zexal weapon grants us an additional 1,000 attack, so he'll jump up to 6,000. And the Zexal weapon grants him a negation. A very interesting monster negate at that, given that it negates at resolution and doesn't start a chain. Also, though, while this card is equipped with a Zexal weapon, as a quick effect, you can target an effect monster your opponent controls, negate its effects, and if you do, have its attack. That attack negation, or that effect negation is permanent, and the attack reduction is also permanent. So basically what we do off the Utopia line is summon a 6,000 attack double monster negate, which is really insane. Been having a lot of fun testing this post-ban list, and it's worked out quite well. Stay tuned for a combo tutorial showcasing how that all works out. But anyway, we're on 2 copies of X-Blower in the extra deck. Just really good Springans boss monster for going second, helping break boards. Basically, you choose an opponent's zone, and then you detach any number of materials from this card, and then destroy cards in the chosen zone and the zones adjacent to it on the top, bottom, and left and right. Almost in a T pattern, like a plus pattern. So very cool area of effect. Also, X-Blower, like Merrymaker, as a quick effect during the opponent's man or battle phase, can tag itself out and banish itself to the end phase. So it can also dodge removal, which is really, really cool. Then, of course, we play an Xyz archetype, and a lot of those Xyzes can attach different material to themselves. So, of course, we play the Zeus because it just makes sense. We all know what Zeus does. It's one of the most powerful extra deck monsters in the game right now. If you have access to make Zeus, make the Zeus. Then, moving on to our fusions, we're on 2 copies of Sprint, the Iron Dash Dragon. This is the Springans Albaz fusion. Basically, during the main phase, we can move this card we control to another of our main monster zones. And then, if we do, we can destroy all their face-up cards in this card's column. So it almost has like a Mech Knight kind of effect where it can like jump zones. And then whatever zone it lands in, it nukes all face-up cards in that column. It's a really interesting form of removal. Then, during the end phase, if this card's in the graveyard because it will center this turn, we can either add to our hand or special summon a Fallen of Albaz or a Springans monster. So really, really great card. Then, of course, we're on the 1 Brigand, the Glory Dragon, and 1 Albion, the Branded Dragon. Again, these are just more Albaz fusion targets we play. Albion being able to fusion summon into another fusion by banishing material. Brigand being unable to be destroyed by battle. And then also, each of them during the end phase have different effects. Albion lets us add or set a Brand Dispel Trap from the deck to the field. And Brigand allows us to search out the Tri-Brigade Mercourier to our hand, which is really cool as well. Then we are on Lubellion. We're back on this post-ban list. Just because now, like, that Verte is banned, in order for us to make Mirror Jade, we're probably going to be doing it off of Albion. And Albion does banish the materials. So if we want to get those materials back, the only way to do that is through Lubellion's effect. So we run the 1 Lubellion now, post-ban list. Obviously, the 1 Mirror Jade as well. Mirror Jade is still one of the most cracked boss monsters I've read in recent memory. Very, very strong and impressive card. Do not sleep on this thing. And then for the last slot in the extra deck is 1 copy of Dark the Dark Charmer. This is just something I've been testing, actually. Still a little bit on the fence as to whether or not I want to continue running this. I'm just testing with it because I know that a lot of the boss monsters in the format happen to be dark. So if we can get into a situation where we can make this, we can just revive one of their boss monsters from their grave and just use it against them, which I think is really cool. Assuming those cards are summoned correctly. But if you don't want to run this, you don't have to. I'm testing with it. I haven't seen any downsides to it yet, but I could see an argument to run something else in its place. I'm just not sure what exactly. If you guys want to maybe suggest in the comments a card that I could maybe run in place of this, then I'm all ears. But until then, I think Dark is a really good card for that. And that wraps up the extra deck, guys. We'll dive into the side deck very briefly. Pretty self-explanatory here. I don't want to waste too much of your time. A triple Lava Golem just to help us going second and break boards, obviously. 2 copies of Nibiru, the Primal Being, again, just to help us combat that like new punk, synchro, adventure, 60-card amalgamation combo line deck. People don't respect Nib and they'll lose to it very easily. Triple copies of Xyz Import is a really interesting tech choice in the side. This just allows us to target an opponent's monster and attach it to an Xyz we control as material. So it just like steals their monster basically, which is really funny. So I've been testing with that in the side. It's worked out great, especially going second. Then of course for our back row heavy matchups, 1 Duster, triple Cosmic Cyclone. Again, just to deal with like pesky floodgates, or now that like Mystic Mine is starting to see a resurgence in the format, this is obviously really good to side into against decks that want to run that crap. Then we play 2 Barrage Blasts in the side. This card is hilarious. It basically reads, detach any number of material from a Machine Xyz monster you control, then target that many cards in the field and blow them up. Awesome. So we side 2 of it. And then for the last card in the side deck is 1 Spriggan's Blast. This is just like an in-archetype in Infinite Impermanence for the deck, that we just happen to side deck. And that's pretty much it for the deck, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed some of the spice that I brought to you today. Stay tuned. I will be planning on doing a combo tutorial for this updated version. But with that being said, I want to thank you all. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and stay tuned for more awesome Yu-Gi-Oh content.